This is the Audi V10 Performance, and there are two very good reasons why we're revisiting it in this video. The first is, this is the best sounding car this side of $1 million Lamborghini Aventador. That Atmo V10 sounds truly operatic. And two, I reckon this car's pretty much guaranteed to be a future modern classic. In this video, I'm going to explain why. We're going to have a look around the car's design, take it for a drive to test its 0 to 100 acceleration. So faster than Audi's official 0 to 100 claims. And then jump inside to have a look at the cabin. Before all that though, have you subscribed to our YouTube channel yet? If not, scroll up, hit that button now and hit the bell icon. We test everything from supercars right through to super minis, and we'll have two in-depth reviews just like this one every single week. All right, time for some V10 goodness. I want to start with a question. Am I the only one that thinks that the R8 is a bit of a forgotten supercar? In a world of flashy Ferraris, Lamborghinis, even 911s, I reckon the R8 kind of flies under the radar a little bit and you hardly ever see them around. Am I alone in thinking that? Jump into the comments below and let me know. All right, now how this car looks. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. It's certainly more exotic than a 911. The R8's been around since 2006, and since then, Audi has been busy making it sharper and more angular, basically. The car we have today is the flagship R8 V10 Performance Quattro. It's going to cost you $395,000. You can buy a rear-wheel drive version of this car for 100 grand less, and I actually think that's a smarter buy. But let's get into what you get on this car, because you are getting quite a lot of tech. The design is really, really sharp. Audi did treat this car to an update fairly recently, and what that update did is it made all of this front bumper way more aggressive, way more angular. So they made the front grille much larger. They also added these 3 slots in here, which is a bit of a nod to a UR Quattro Sport. Basically, the whole visual update takes inspiration from Audi's R8 GT3 racing car, which is cool. Headlights, always a highlight on an Audi, and these are no exception. You still get the Matrix LED technology in here, and Audi says they can actually project up to 500 meters at nighttime, which is handy. You get more angular front air intakes here, and flagship V10 Performance models get the carbon exterior pack, which adds carbon on the front splitter, the sills, and out the back on the rear diffuser as standard. If you want to add this carbon exterior pack to your rear-wheel drive model, it's going to cost you more than $21,000, which is pretty hefty. This car actually doesn't have many options at all. The only option is the Audi badge in black for a fairly reasonable $700. I'd probably tick that option myself. Now, around the side, actually, there's one thing on the front I forgot to mention, and that is the nose. It looks really, really low, but it's not as low as some rivals in this segment, and you don't have to stress too much about catching it on speed humps and graunching it as you go through intersections, which is handy because this car doesn't have a lift kit as standard. Now, one thing that I am actually really stressed about are these beautiful 20-inch wheels. They are milled, and the face of the wheel itself is pretty much in line with the rubber, and it just gives me the cold sweats thinking about curbing these wheels when I'm parking it. The design itself, really beautiful. Silver finish on some elements, black painted on others. Lurking behind the wheels are standard carbon ceramic brakes clamped by 6-piston front brake calipers. And in this car, they are painted in the no-cost option gloss blue. You can also have gloss red for no-cost option as well. Entry-level rear-wheel drive versions of the R8, they get standard steel brakes clamped by 8-piston calipers. But if you want the carbon stoppers on your rear-wheel drive model, $21,600, which is a bit of a sting. Now, coming down the side of the car, got a V10 badge, just in case you forget what you have lurking behind you. These mirror caps are heated, fold electrically, and have carbon caps, which is nice. Carbon down the side of the car as well for the skirts. And of course, you've got the distinctive R8 blade. Interestingly, if you want to tell the difference between an entry-level R8 and this flagship Quattro model, the rear-wheel drive cars have the top section in Mythos black, but the bottom section is in body color. This car has carbon for both, and if you really want, you can pretty much option these however you want your R8 to look. Ah yes, the fuel filler cap. I reckon this is the coolest fuel filler cap currently on sale. I can't think of anyone's cooler. If you can, let me know in the comments below. Around the back of the car, I think it actually might be this car's best angle. The impression you get is of absolute width, and in this car, lots and lots of carbon. Carbon on the rear wing and this rear diffuser, which has been redesigned. You also get massive oval exhaust pipes, which sound phenomenal, which we'll get to in a little bit. Other things worth pointing out are these taillights, which look really cool, and they don't have OLED technology like some of Audi's lesser models, like an SQ5, which is, I don't know, maybe that's showing this car's age a little bit. But you forget all that when you peer through this piece of glass and you see, look at that, actually opens automatically, which is quite cool. And you clock the 5.2 litre Atmo V10, which is the absolute heart and soul of this car. It's like a piece of installation art in there. Audi has even fitted 2 little lights inside the engine bay, so at night time you can come out here and just peer at your Atmo V10. Sounds a little bit cheesy, I would totally do it. Anyway, that V10 sounds absolutely phenomenal, so let's go and give it a go at 8,500 RPM. At this point, we need to inject a bit of a sobering truth, and that is that this V10, this thumping 5.2 litre piece of engineering brilliance, it is the last of its kind. Everything is going turbocharged these days, and Audi itself has said it wants the next R8, even the next TT, to go all electric, or at least have all electric versions. And if that is the case, that pretty much guarantees its future desirability. That's what I mean about this car is going to be a future modern classic, because this engine is the beating heart and soul of what makes this car so special. That noise, the way the revs build, the crescendo all the way up to that 8,500 RPM. It is such an event. This car feels so special, even to drive it on a normal public road like we are today. It's seriously quick as well. You might think that because it has no turbos, it might lack a bit of mid-range punch that you get from a lot of turbocharged engine these days, but even from low in the rev range like we are now, oh, the pickup and the response is seriously impressive. You can have this engine in 2 states of tune. Audi will sell you the rear-wheel drive model, which we spoke about earlier. That has 397 kilowatts and 540 Newton meters. But this is the big bad flagship, and it gets the full beans. So we've got 449 kilowatts or 600 horsepower in the old money to play with, and 560 Newton meters. In terms of straight line acceleration, well, Audi reckons this car will go from 0 to 100 k's an hour, or 62 miles an hour, in 3.2 seconds. That's really rapid. But rather than just take their word for it, how about we strap on the V-Box, find an empty road, and see what it can do in the real world. Okay, we have the V-Box attached, and this car has a very effective and easy to use launch control system. Simply put the car in one of its aggressive drive modes, left foot on the brake, flatten the throttle, and away you go. I'm going to shift gears myself. I've got it in manual. Let's just do it, see what time we get. Oh! Wow, that is ferocious. The road we're on is slightly uphill, and that was 3.3 seconds to 100. So a whisker away from Audi's official claim, and I reckon there is definitely more time. We had a bit of wheel slip at the beginning, but wow, this is a very, very quick and user-friendly car to launch. Let's give it a go. Oh, wow! Okay, that run was 3.1 seconds to 100 k's an hour, so extremely violent, and actually a tenth faster than Audi's official 0 to 100 claims. that legit hurt my neck a little bit. It's a feeling similar to when you're on a roller coaster at Dreamworld or a theme park. Just that, oh, it's almost electric car-like. This car is that quick, and it just grips and goes. There's no wasting any time in wheel spin or anything like that. The Quattro system is absolutely on point. Time speaks for itself, 3.1 seconds to 100 k's an hour. So this is a seriously rapid machine in a straight line, but Audi's engineers have also made it a very, very convincing road car to drive quickly. If you want to see how this car performs at the limit and beyond the limit on the track, our pals over at the Motor YouTube channel have driven this car extensively, and hopefully we can put a link to one of their track videos up here for you to click through. But in terms of how this car makes you feel, what its responses are like on a winding public road, I think it's very, very close to being bang on. The steering, let's start with that. Look, Audi steering can sometimes be a bit hit and miss, and it's never the last word in feel or connection to the front axle, and it's no different here really. Not much feedback is coming through. However, the steering itself is nice and quick, it's accurate, the weighting is spot on. So there's a few different weights you can choose from. When you have the car just in normal mode, when you're cruising around town, the steering's actually very, very light. It's very easy to maneuver this car, which is handy if you are driving in underground car parks, getting the car out of your car park in the morning, that kind of thing. It is very easy to get around, not like, you know, an old school bulky supercar like a Lamborghini Countach, where you've got to have the biceps of a bodybuilder to get it to move. This is very easy. But when you put the car into sport, individual, and you start to drive quickly, it starts to weigh up really nicely. It's a very confidence-inspiring system, mostly because of the way it turns in. There is loads of grip here at your disposal, and it's good that the steering, the rate of response from the steering feels very natural. It's not like a Ferrari F8 Tributo or something like that that has a hyperactive steering rack where you just put like the slightest amount of lock on and you dive into the corner. The rate of response from this car feels really natural, and that inspires confidence, for me at least. In terms of outright grip and agility, like the steering, this car is very confidence inspiring. We've got sticky Pirelli tyres front and rear, 245 section at the front, 305 section at the back, and we have Audi's infamous Quattro system, so we have plenty of grip at our disposal. But the good news is that it hasn't taken away the fun. Sometimes Audi's Quattro system can make the car feel a little bit inert. It can make it feel too grippy, but that's not the case here. We've got plenty of purchase at the front axle, so you have the confidence to lean on the car, but you do have that sense on corner exit that you can almost drive the car on the throttle. Traction control can be turned all the way off. You can have a half mode, and when you are in the half mode, you get that lovely sense of just driving the car on the throttle. All of the weight is on the rear axle, and that for me is what driving is all about. The gearbox. It is Audi's 7-speed dual clutch, and it is on the move like this. Oh, it is seriously rapid. Up and down the gearbox. The response is exactly what you want. You want instantaneous shifts when you want them. You don't want your shifts denied. And I've never once had a shift denied in this car, probably because it revs all the way to 8,500 RPM. But sometimes in performance cars, you want a gear and the car just never gives it to you. But in this car, you get what you want when you want it. So zero complaints about how this gearbox performs when you're up the car for the rent. It's a very fast, very responsive unit. Same can't be said when you slow down and you start to drive around town. Some typical dual clutch gearbox foibles, some rolling, some hesitation, the occasional bum shift. That does start to creep in a little bit when you're cruising around town, but it's far from shocking. They are very minor little glitches, just little things you sort of notice every now and again. It's not going to become a major problem. You could easily daily this car. The visibility out is fantastic. The steering, as I mentioned before, it's nice and light, maneuverable in comfort mode. And the gearbox, for the most part, does a very good job of just slurring through the gears and basically fading into the background. But perhaps the biggest dynamic hurdle facing this Quattro flagship R8 is the R8 itself, the rear-wheel drive model, because not only is that car significantly cheaper, but you do get the purity of rear-wheel drive. And when you're not driving in wet conditions all the time, when you're not absolutely gunning for it on the circuit, you don't need that constant purchase and confidence that all-wheel drive gives you. I think the rear-wheel drive car does deliver a little bit more driver involvement. The final piece of the dynamic puzzle to discuss are the brakes. And initially, I was a little bit iffy on them because a lot of performance cars, particularly at this price point, the brake pedal feel is really, really firm at the top of the pedal. And that's good because it gives you instant confidence that the car is going to pull up when you want it to. But this car's pedal is more like a typical road car in that it has quite a sneeze factor at the top of the pedal. There's quite a bit of travel in an initial application, and when you're starting to press on, that can be a little bit disconcerting, but it's not a negative, it's just something to get used to. In terms of actual stopping performance and stopping power, zero complaints there. These big carbon ceramics do a very good job of pulling the car up exactly where you want it to, and you never have any of those moments as you come into a corner like this one, thinking that you're going to misjudge a braking zone and fire yourself off into the bushes. I would never, ever, ever get tired of that engine. I would just slow down and do that for no reason other than to hear that V10 sing. It's at the core of what makes this car so special. But also for me, the other part of what makes this car so desirable is it has more than one side to its personality. Yes, it's an absolute weapon when you want it to be on the public road and especially on the track. But when you want to just wind things back, there is another side to this car's personality. Put the dynamic dampers into their softer setting. The vision out is fantastic. The ride smooths off all but the sharpest bumps. There's even a decent amount of space to put things. And I think you could absolutely daily this car. It could potentially be an everyday supercar. And I think there's a lot of cars in this segment that wouldn't be able to do both of those things quite as convincingly as this one. But to further explore the practicality and the comfort of what this car is like to live with day to day, let's pull over and have a look at this cabin. Inside the R8, the first thing you notice is that it isn't screen overload like you get in a lot of Audi's new models like RS7, RS6, RSQ8, which have the twin screen setup with haptic feedback on the center console and another screen ahead of you in the instrument cluster. In the R8, we only get one digital screen, 12.3-inch virtual cockpit, and it is a good one. Audi just nails these systems. The configurability, the way that all of the systems and menus are laid out is very easy to navigate, and you do get wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There are a couple of USB ports ahead of that and a slot to put your phone as well as a 12-volt socket. System itself with Apple CarPlay integrated, very easy to use, although I do wish that Apple CarPlay would go full width of this 12.3-inch instrument cluster. There might be a way to do that, but I haven't been able to figure it out just yet. The rest of the dials, really nicely executed. Sometimes digital dials can be a bit fussy, but in this, the graphics, the fonts, very easy to read at a glance, which is what you want from your instrument cluster. Equipment-wise, you are getting loads, which is what you'd expect from your high-performance supercar that costs almost $500,000. 3-stage heated seats, dual-zone climate control, and it's worth pointing out the tactility of these climate control dials is spot on. Audi just nails this kind of stuff. You even get a CD player tucked behind the center console here. How old school is that? And when you do put your disc in, you're going to treat your ears as well, because the audio system is a 13-speaker Bang & Olufsen. It's very, very good. Other equipment emissions, look, I'd probably want a 360-degree view camera, mostly because, as I mentioned earlier, I get the cold sweats about curbing those wheels, parking it, especially in an underground car park. One thing you do get, carbon inlays around the air vents on the center stack here and around the digital cluster. That's standard on this flagship model, but if you want it in your entry-level rear-wheel drive R8, that's going to sting you about $8,000. That's not cheap. And there is a decent amount of places to put things. There's that cubby ahead of the gear shifter for your phone, a couple of cup holders in this little cubby here, which can fit takeaway coffee cup and even my oversized drink bottle. Although, again, another minor gripe is the positioning of these cup holders. They're really behind you. So as I discovered driving here this morning, you actually have to sort of turn around and take your eyes off the road a little bit to access your coffee cup, which isn't really ideal. There is a decent amount of room behind the seats to store things. You can fit a couple of soft bags back there, and there's another net. And in the frunk, it's surprisingly large. It's quite deep, and you can fit, again, another couple of soft bags in there. It's got another 12-volt socket in there and a little storage net as well. I've got no real complaints, beyond the fact that maybe the R8's cabin is starting to show its age compared to the newer Audi cabins, but honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. Overall, the Audi R8 feels really exotic, certainly more exotic than something like a run-of-the-mill 911. It feels really, really special, and it's never flashy or ostentatious. I like that it kind of flies under the radar a little bit. So should it be on your shortlist? Well, if you're lucky enough to have $400,000 to drop on a supercar and you're drawn to buying one of the greatest production engines ever built that pretty much guarantees this car future modern classic status, then yes, absolutely.